Welcome to the Gen Z Journey, where we work with you through an entrepreneurial lens to build a wholesome perspective on life and build both our business and personal dreams together. Join our community on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn at Gen Z Journey. Hello and welcome to another Gen Z Journey podcast as we move into our third and final episode in our three-part series on finance. And this week we're discussing the topic of crisis preparation, and that's both in preparation for and during a crisis. So before we get on and discuss this week's topic, I'd just like to get everybody to know that you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for all the updates on the releases of our podcast, as well as the release of our articles and all the other exciting stuff that's going on at the Gen Z. And I'd like to let other people know as well, regular listeners, you can now find the podcast on YouTube, and we video all of the Zooms that we're doing, obviously, with it being COVID at the moment, and you can find all of the kind of visual and audio over at YouTube. But without further ado, let's get on with this week's topic and get straight onto the wonderful article that Aaron wrote again this week. So Aaron, I start with the same question every time for these kind of discussion podcasts. What was your motives behind writing this article, and why did you pick this title?
Yeah, definitely. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. We're currently in a pandemic, and that idea of being in a pandemic and watching people struggle financially, it was kind of the motivation behind the article. A lot of people are struggling financially, or they're going to struggle financially. Someone like me that just graduated on Friday last week has no job.
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's fun, and I'm glad I graduated. But at the same time, it's kind of scary because all the job offers I had were rescinded, and so now I don't really know where to go with this, and it's been a little bit of a difficult task trying to manage that and trying to figure out finances for the future.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm sure this is an article that a lot of people can relate to, particularly in the current times that we're in. We were just talking before this podcast, and Joe highlighted that we're 5 months into this now, and there's no business plan or for a business, or there's no personal financial plan that can really take into account for a 5-month leave of income or of a significant drop in income. So yeah, definitely an article that I think a lot of people can relate to, unfortunately, in these times. But something that really struck me throughout this whole article, as kind of a general overview when I was reading it, Aaron, is that yes, things can get very, very difficult and financial crises occur in cycles, right? But one of the things that really occurred to me is it's all about the way in which you kind of approach your finances way before. It's not about, we're talking about preparing for a crisis and during a crisis and how to manage then, but actually that preparation starts way before, and is not necessarily preparation in the sense of you're not preparing for the crisis, like it's going to happen now, but you're just managing your money well and you have your finances in order. That's what I really got from it. Would you say that's a big part of it as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't really be prepared for a crisis without having well-organized finances, think about it in the sense of if you want to have money saved up, you have to understand how to be able to manage your money. You need to know how to be able to penny pinch in certain occasions where you can save money, for example, like buying groceries and cooking at home versus getting takeout every night or something like that. Learning to be able to manage that in the long term ultimately prepares you for a crisis, because you will have better understanding of your finances and how to be able to adjust your money accordingly based on whether you're in a crisis or not.
Absolutely. And Joe, did you have anything to kind of add to that in terms of?
The biggest and best companies that we've seen prepare themselves when it's good times, we're preparing for the bad times. Most companies that when they're riding the wave high, they just keep riding it and not thinking about it that the wave's going to come down. So that's definitely preparing and then being smart, looking ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's partly as well. It's a lot to do with that kind of being humble. The fact is that it's a great time right now, but something may always happen, or something will always happen, and so to just bear that in mind and just not losing yourself in it is definitely something to bear in mind. And that was the next thing I was going to ask you about, Aaron, is understanding the economy was one of the sections you put in there that was pretty important as well, and understanding these ideas of business cycles and economic cycles. And could you kind of just summarize some of them for our listeners?
Yeah. First of all, sorry about the interruption. I know I got distracted for a second.
Life is real.
So to kind of summarize a little bit of each of those topics, you mentioned first business cycles and really understanding business cycles. That's a big part of being able to prepare yourself, because if you understand a business and you manage yourself in the sense of like a business, you should understand when things are going to be bought, when things are not going to be bought. Really understanding just things like inventory turnover in your business, and understanding how you're going in and out of inventory. That can correlate to your life as well. Really understanding how quickly you blow through your money, or how quickly you use the assets that you have. Something like how often do I need to buy toilet paper is something that would come up in that sense. That can be correlated to a business cycle. Economic cycles are really important to take into consideration, because that's really what marks whether we're in a recession or not, whether our economy is shrinking or it's expanding. Our last contraction in the economy was in 2008 with the housing crisis, and since then we've been uptrending pretty much since 2009 2010 area. We started uptrending again, and we've been on a good hot economy, but we're at the point where we're reaching that slowdown. And in fact, we're turning negative. And so understanding that in moments like this, where an economy is contracting and the growth of an economy is not happening, that's when you need your money the most. And being able to just understand the ideas of the basic economic activities is important.
Absolutely. And kind of that definitely relates as well to another podcast in our first week of this finance topic, actually, with Jedediah Collins, where we were talking about kind of businesses is in every part of your life and can be applied to all parts of your life, and to be a CEO of your own life and your own finances to manage those things and to stay on top of them and be a CEO of your life and be in control and be in the driving seat. And then also to reference another bit, and I'll get you to recap it slightly, but again, this was in the last week's topic about getting rid of bad debt. And we spoke about kind of debt management last week in the article and in the podcast, so you can head back to last week's if you want to have a listen to that one as well. But yeah, could you just kind of summarize those points again, of just reiterating kind of last week's content?
Yeah. So to kind of summarize it, bad debt is that expenditure of things that you don't necessarily need. It's like putting debt onto a credit card because you wanted to go on a vacation, or buy that awesome new car, or I don't know, get the new iPhone. That kind of stuff is bad debt, and it's things you don't really want to hold with you, especially because most of that bad debt tends to have higher interest rates and have a higher impact on your financials in the long term. So really being able to just hunker down and pay those off as soon as possible and get rid of those is really important. And pretty much, being able to understand the difference between having good debt and bad debt. Having good debt is something like your house, because even in moments like a recession, you're going to have equity in that house if you need some sort of cash. Not to mention, your house in the long term is always going to appreciate, so that would be a form of good debt.
Absolutely. And Joe, I wanted to bring you in on this in terms of just the financial implications of what's going on in the economy at the moment. You were around in 2008. You know what that was like. You felt it. You lived through it. What for you? How does the current financial affairs kind of compare to that? What's similar? What's different?
The what's similar is we're being hurt, but we're not all being hurt. In 2008, it wasn't a worldwide, and I'm going to say that's the difference here. And again, nobody has been in what I have seen and heard, to the best of my recollection, 5 months totally shut down. And then the world's still going on. And not just us here in the U.S., other parts of the world. That I don't believe we have ever witnessed. So that, as a business-wise, that's the big difference. 2008 was real estate in the U.S. Yes, it has a domino effect around the world, but in a different way. And Aaron, you could elaborate on that later, and that is because it's a chain effect. If we're hit here, how it affects the other side of the world. But by being shut down with no business, no sales, and then in Austria, no sales, that's the difference. In 2008, it was just in the U.S. It took the hit of real estate, which is probably one of our strongest financial endeavors, because that's probably your biggest purchase of the lifetime, usually. So that would be the difference.
Yeah, and for someone in our generation, to put it in a way that people might understand, an example would be like you trying to pause a video game while you're playing online with other people. Even though you put pause on your game, everything's still going and everything's still happening. So how do you pause your life for this pandemic while you have everything still happening? You still have to pay your mortgage, you still have to pay your bills, you still have to support your children and buy food. A lot of things are happening and you can't just press pause. So it's something that's unprecedented for sure.
I'm just going to reflect on something was said a little bit earlier, and I'm going to get off track a little bit, but not really. If we could compare this, we would say businesses are going through cycles which go up and down. Think of this. If you were a company, let's say a ski company, you're open 4 months out of the year. That's a good business plan, because they prepare themselves for 8 months with no income, and yet they can survive all year round. So, a model like that is unbelievable. But when you have yearly sales, week after week after week, then you have to jump back to, oh my gosh, 5 months no income. Nobody saw the train coming.
Certainly. And the next area that I wanted to jump onto was what we've been talking about is, this is definitely a time that's very unprecedented and everything. But what I don't want people to get the wrong idea about is, we shouldn't be fearful. We shouldn't be fearful of finances. We shouldn't be fearful of preparing for what is inevitable in a lot of cases. And we talk about it. There's a lot of negative things that are going on, particularly with finances at the moment. But to not be fearful of it, just be aware of it and just adapt your behavior to prepare for it. Because we're not saying that you need to be constantly thinking about, when's the next crash going to be? If you're just aware of it, that there is going to be one in the future, just taking little steps each day or each week to ensure that your finances are in check in general means you'll be able to get through crises like these and in some cases like in 2008, but you'll be able to get through those crises if you just take those steps each week, each day, whenever it is. And I think that's really something that I wanted to just preach on this article, is the fact that there can be a lot of fear associated with finances in crisis, but if you just take those steps, you can definitely alleviate that. And I think, Aaron, you kind of agree with that.
I completely agree, Rio. So, as an entrepreneur too, looking at it from that kind of perspective, you can't be afraid of the unknown. You always have to be able to look beyond and see what is currently in front of you, and see what you can do with what you have in front of you, and then strategize for a path that you can take with what's in front of you, but also being able to strategize in case what you plan doesn't go your way. So, that's a very entrepreneurial mindset, to not be afraid of it and just embrace it instead and be able to work around it.
Exactly.
Now, talking about embracing it, there we go. So now that it's a negative, let's turn it into a positive. Let's not run away from it. So what's this going to happen to the entrepreneur? They're going to embrace it. And what has happened, they've learned to take their finances and learn to take and tighten up the belt, learn to audit themselves to find out if there's any wasted money on the spreadsheet. And so in the end of this, it just makes us better. And so looking at it that way is so positive, and thinking, wow, I'm being more efficient through the hardest times. You can come out a winner.
Yeah, and that auditing really goes into reflecting. I talk a lot about being able to grow myself on a personal level, and I think one of the main ways that I grow, and I believe everyone else grows, is through reflection. And that auditing, in a sense, is a business reflection. When you audit your own finances, you're doing a personal finance reflection, and you can audit your own personal life and your goals and what you do in that same manner.
But let's face it, it's like putting on another old suit, reaching in the pocket and pulling out $100 bill that you forgot to spend last time. It makes you feel good.
Definitely.
It's very true. Very true. And I think that's kind of all we got time for on this episode. But definitely go and check out the article. We posted it yesterday. You can go and find that on the website. We'll obviously have the link in the description, so you can go and find it there. But definitely go and have a read. Very informative. Can really help you kind of prepare for and during a crisis, like it says. So go and check that out. Like I said at the start of the podcast as well, we're there on Facebook, Instagram. We're now on YouTube, so you can go and find this podcast on YouTube as well if you want to see our beautiful mugs. But until next time, we'll finish as we always do. Cheers for now. As always, head over to the Instagram and Facebook at Gen Z Journey, where you can get an inside scoop of what's going on behind the scenes, as well as seeing the exciting guests that are coming on for that week. But above all else, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate all your participation, and we're excited you're on this journey with us. See you next time.